Commander Zixthel stared at the empty coffee cup on his desk and wished he could understand why humans needed such bitter drinks to function. 3 years had passed since the war ended, and he still found human habits puzzling. The cup belonged to Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the human prisoner who worked in the research division 2 floors below his office. She had left it behind after their last meeting about battle tactics. The Corvani officer pushed the cup aside and returned to his reports. Nexus Prime Station hummed quietly around him as thousands of beings from different worlds went about their daily business. The neutral station served as a meeting place for species across the galaxy, and Zixthel had chosen to work here because it felt peaceful. After 4 years of fighting humans, he craved peace more than anything else. His door chimed softly. Admiral Velcross entered without waiting for permission, which meant the news was either very good or very bad. Zixthel had served under the Admiral for 15 years and knew his moods. "Well, Commander, we have a new assignment for you," Velcro said, placing a sealed data pad on the desk. "This comes directly from Coalition High Command." Zix picked up the pad and scanned the authorization codes. They were genuine and carried the highest security clearance. "What kind of assignment, sir?" "We need you to analyze human combat footage. Everything we recorded during the war. Your job is to figure out why they were so effective against us." The commander felt his stomach tighten. He had spent 3 years trying to forget the war, trying to push away memories of human soldiers charging into plasma fire without hesitation. "Sir, with respect, we won the war. Why does it matter how they fought?" Velcro sat down heavily in the chair across from Zixthel's desk. The Admiral looked older than his 60 years, and the war had added gray streaks to his blue skin. "Because we barely won, Commander. We lost more ships and soldiers fighting humans than we did in the previous 50 years of galactic conflicts combined. High Command wants to understand why. The humans were desperate. Desperate beings fight harder than others. It was more than desperation." Velcro's activated the data pad, and holographic images filled the air above the desk. "Look at these casualty reports. In every major battle, human units performed better as their losses increased. That goes against every principle of military psychology. We know." Zixthel studied the floating numbers. Coalition forces typically showed declining performance as casualties mounted. Morale broke down. Units scattered and organized. Resistance collapsed. The human data showed the opposite pattern. "This can't be accurate." "I thought the same thing. So did our analysts. We checked the data 12 times. It's correct." Velcro waved his hand and the images changed to show battle recordings. "Watch this footage from the defense of Kepler Station." The hologram showed a human female in military uniform. Her name tag read Parker. She stood behind a makeshift barricade shouting orders to her soldiers as Coalition forces advanced down a corridor. Plasma bolts flew around her and explosions shook the walls. Captain Lisa Parker held this position for 18 hours, Velcro explained. "Our tactical computers calculated that her unit should have been overrun in 30 minutes. They were outnumbered 8-1 and had limited ammunition." Zixthel watched as Parker grabbed a wounded soldier and dragged him to safety while still firing her weapon. A plasma bolt burned through her left shoulder, but she kept fighting. She's injured, why doesn't she fall? Back, keep watching, the recording continued. Parker's unit took heavy casualties, but the survivors didn't retreat. Instead, they fought with more intensity. When their primary weapons ran out of power, they switched to backup weapons. When those failed, they used improvised explosives. Parker herself fought for the final 6 hours with a broken arm and severe burns. Our forces finally withdrew, Velcro said. Quietly, we had overwhelming numerical superiority, better weapons, and tactical advantage, but we couldn't break through. 18 humans defending a corridor. Zix felt confused. Military doctrine taught that units became less effective as they took casualties. Wounded soldiers couldn't fight as well as healthy ones. Fear and exhaustion reduced combat performance, yet the humans in the recording seemed to grow stronger as their situation became more hopeless. There are thousands of similar recordings. The Admiral continued. Human units that fought better when surrounded, soldiers who charged enemy positions after being wounded, entire companies that refused to surrender even when facing certain death. Maybe they were using combat drugs, chemical enhancement to ignore pain and fear. Velcro shook his head. We tested captured humans for drug use. They were clean. Whatever drove them to fight like that came from inside them, not from external substances. The data pad displayed more information. Zixthal read reports from coalition medical officers who had treated human prisoners. The doctors described injuries that should have been fatal, yet the humans survived. They documented cases of humans remaining conscious and alert with blood loss that would kill most other species. Look at this report from Dr. Cathmer, Velcro said, highlighting a section of text. He treated a human soldier who had been shot through the chest. The wound should have killed him instantly. Instead, the human walked 2 km to reach friendly forces before collapsing. Zixthal read the medical report twice. The human soldier, Lieutenant Jake Morrison, had suffered damage to major organs and massive blood loss. Any other species would have died within minutes. Morrison not only survived but continued fighting for over an hour after being wounded. The human told Dr. Cathamer that he needed to warn his unit about an enemy ambush. Velcro continued. He considered his mission more important than his life. That's not logical. Individual survival is the strongest biological drive in every known species. Exactly, which is why High Command wants you to study these cases. We need to understand what makes humans different. Six scrolled through more reports. Every file contained similar stories. Humans who fought past the point where other beings would surrender, soldiers who sacrificed themselves to save their comrades, officers who led desperate charges against impossible odds. The most disturbing reports came from coalition soldiers who had fought humans directly. They described an enemy that seemed to welcome combat rather than avoid it. Human battle cries that sent chills through experienced warriors. The way human soldiers smiled before attacking, as if they were enjoying themselves. How long do I have to complete this analysis? Zixth asked. 6 months. I know it's not much time, but High Command is eager for answers. The peace treaty with Earth is holding, but intelligence suggests the humans are rebuilding their military faster than expected. Velcro stood up to leave, then paused at the door. Commander, I want you to know that this assignment isn't punishment. You're the best tactical analyst in the coalition fleet. If anyone can figure out what made the human so dangerous, it's you. After the admiral left, Zixthel sat alone with the data pad. The device contained terabytes of combat footage, medical reports, and tactical analyses. 6 months to understand a species that had nearly defeated the most powerful military alliance in galactic history. He activated the first video file. It showed a human Marine charging across an open battlefield while coalition aircraft strafed the ground around him. The Marine reached enemy lines and began fighting with nothing but a combat knife. Other humans followed him, screaming battle cries that made Zixthel's skin crawl. The commander paused the recording and looked at Elena Rodriguez's coffee cup again. Such a simple thing, bitter liquid that helped humans stay alert, yet even their daily habit seemed designed for endurance and survival. He picked up the cup and examined it closely. The ceramic was chipped and stained from heavy use. Any other species would have replaced it with something newer and better, but humans seemed to value things that had survived hardship, even coffee cups. Zixthel activated his workstation and began downloading the first batch of combat recordings. 6 months to understand why the galaxy's apex predators had been fought to a standstill by a species that cherished broken coffee cups. 2 weeks into his investigation, Zixthel had watched enough human combat footage to give him nightmares. Recordings showed patterns that made no sense according to everything he knew about warfare. The more he studied human tactics, the more confused he became. He sat in his office reviewing the battle of Kepler Station for the 5th time. Captain Lisa Parker's defense had become his primary case study because it represented everything strange about human warfare. The tactical computers showed clear mathematical proof that her position should have fallen quickly, yet she held it for 18 hours against impossible odds. Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered his office carrying 2 cups of coffee. She had been helping with translations and cultural context for the past week. The human woman was in her 40s with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. You look tired, Commander, she said, placing 1 cup on his desk. Human coffee helps with alertness. Zix picked up the cup and sniffed the bitter liquid. Dr. Rodriguez, I need to ask you about something that puzzles me. Of course. What would you like to know? He activated the holographic display and showed her the Kepler station footage. Captain Parker's unit performed better as casualties increased. Every military manual says this should be impossible. Wounded soldiers fight worse, not better. Reduces combat effectiveness, yet your people seem to grow stronger when facing defeat. Elena watched the recording quietly. Parker was pulling wounded soldiers to safety while enemy plasma bolts burned the air around her. What specifically confuses you? Look at minute 47. Parker takes a direct hit to her shoulder. The wound should cause pain, blood loss, and reduce mobility. Instead, she becomes more aggressive. She starts taking risks she avoided when healthy, and that surprises you. Zixthel paused the recording at the moment Parker was hit. Her face showed pain, but also something else. Her expression became harder, more determined. Yes, it surprises me greatly. Pain should make her more cautious, not more Reckless, Elena sipped her coffee and considered her words carefully. Commander, may I ask you about Corvani? Children, how do they play? The question seemed unrelated, but Zixthal answered anyway. Corvani young participate in cooperative activities. They build things together, solve puzzles as groups, and learn to share resources efficiently. Play teaches them to work together peacefully. Human children play differently, Elena said. They compete against each other. They play games where someone wins and someone loses. Tag racing, mock battles with toy weapons. From a very young age, humans learn that conflict is normal and sometimes necessary. That sounds unpleasant for the children who lose. Losing teaches valuable lessons. It shows children that defeat isn't the end of the world. They learn to try again, to find different strategies to push through disappointment. By the time humans reach adulthood, they've experienced thousands of small defeats and learned to overcome them. Zixthal activated another recording. This one showed the Battle of New Berlin, where coalition forces had surrounded a human colony. The defenders were vastly outnumbered and running low on supplies. According to standard military doctrine, they should have surrendered to avoid unnecessary casualties. Instead, the humans fought for 6 weeks. As their situation became more desperate, their resistance grew fiercer. When they ran out of military weapons, they used farming equipment. When coalition forces destroyed their communications, they used drums and smoke signals. When food ran short, they continued fighting on empty stomachs. Dr. Rodriguez, help me understand this battle. Your people were clearly defeated. Why didn't they surrender to save lives? Elena watched the footage of human defenders digging trenches with garden tools because surrender wasn't an option they could accept, but they were dying for nothing. The colony was lost anyway. Was it lost? Look at the casualty reports. Zixthal checked the data. Coalition forces had taken the colony, but at enormous cost. They lost more ships and soldiers at New Berlin than in the previous 3 battles combined. The victory was so expensive that coalition strategy had to be revised for the entire sector. The humans made conquest too costly. Elena explained, every colony you took required massive resources to capture and hold. Even when we lost, we made sure you paid a heavy price for victory. That's spite, not military strategy. Sometimes spite is the best strategy available. If you can't win, make the enemy regret fighting you. Zixthal opened his files on human military doctrine. The documents were filled with concepts that had no equivalent in Corvani culture. Phrases like acceptable losses, strategic withdrawal, and tactical sacrifice appeared constantly. Most disturbing was the human concept of a Pyrrhic victory, winning at such great cost that victory became meaningless. Your military manuals discuss defeat as if it's temporary, he observed. Other species treat defeat as final, because for humans, defeat often is temporary. Our history is full of comebacks, reversals, and second chances. We have sayings about it. It's not over until it's over. The only easy day was yesterday. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Elena activated her personal data pad and showed him images from human history. Ancient battles were smaller. Armies defeated larger ones through determination and clever tactics. Disasters that destroyed cities only for humans to rebuild them stronger than before. Military campaigns that seemed hopeless until sudden reversals changed everything your species has been fighting itself for thousands of years. Zixthal realized constant warfare shaped your evolution, not just warfare natural. Disasters, disease, resource scarcity, ice ages, asteroid impacts, Earth tried to kill us regularly, so we learned to be very hard to kill, she showed him. Records of human settlements in hostile environments, colonies on frozen worlds, where the temperature never rose above freezing, mining stations and asteroid fields, where one mistake meant death, research, outposts on planets with toxic atmospheres and crushing gravity, other species choose safe worlds to colonize. Alina continued, humans go to places that actively try to kill us. We prefer challenges. Zix studied the settlement data. Humans had established colonies in star systems that species avoided as too dangerous, worlds with extreme weather, aggressive wildlife, or geological instability. Rather than seeing these as problems, humans treated them as opportunities to prove their adaptability. This explains the tactical patterns, he said slowly. You're not fighting normally because normal conditions don't exist in human experience. Exactly what you call impossible odds we call Tuesday. What looks like reckless behavior to you is careful planning to us. We assume that worst case scenario because in our experience that's what usually happens. The commander activated another recording, this one from the siege of Armstrong Base. Coalition forces had surrounded the human position and demanded surrender. The human response came from Colonel Ben Hayes, the base commander. Tell your admiral that he can have Armstrong Base when he pries it from our cold dead hands, Hayes had replied, and even then we'll make it explode. Hayes wasn't bluffing. When coalition forces finally overran the base, they found that humans had rigged every building with explosives. The victory gave coalition forces control of a worthless pile of radioactive rubble. Colonel Hayes destroyed his own base rather than let you have it, Zixthal observed. Of course, if we can't keep something, we make sure the enemy can't use it either. Scorched earth tactics. We'd rather rule over ashes than serve in paradise. Alina finished her coffee and stood to leave. Commander, you're trying to understand human warfare using Corvani logic. That's like trying to understand swimming by studying how birds fly. We're different species with different evolutionary pressures. What looks insane to you makes perfect sense to us. After she left, Zixthal sat alone with his data. The patterns were becoming clearer but also more disturbing. Humans didn't just fight differently. They thought about fighting differently. They planned for defeat, trained for disaster, and treated hopeless situations as normal challenges to overcome. He opened his personal files and began writing his preliminary report. The humans hadn't been lucky or desperate during the war. They had been fighting exactly the way their evolution and culture had prepared them to fight. Every impossible victory, every stubborn defense, every costly defeat had followed human nature perfectly. The truly frightening part was that this was just the beginning of his investigation. If human tactics made sense once you understood their background, what other secrets were hidden in the combat footage? What else had the coalition misunderstood about their most dangerous enemy? Zixthal picked up Alina's empty coffee cup and examined it again. The ceramic was old and cracked, but humans kept using it anyway. They seemed to prefer things that had survived damage over things that were perfect and new. Perhaps that philosophy applied to more than just coffee cups. 1 month into his investigation, Zixthel discovered files that changed everything he thought he knew about human biology. The medical reports from coalition field hospitals contained data that seemed impossible, yet had been verified by dozens of different doctors across multiple star systems. He sat in the medical archives of Nexus Prime, reading through classified documents that Admiral Velcro had finally given him access to. Dr. Cathmer, the Coalition's chief medical officer during the war, had compiled detailed studies of human prisoners and casualties. The conclusions were disturbing. Dr. Rodriguez, Zixthel called through his communication device, "I need you to come to Medical Archive 7 immediately. There are things in these files that I cannot understand without your help." Elena arrived 20 minutes later carrying her usual cup of coffee. She looked at the medical equipment surrounding them and raised an eyebrow. "This looks serious, Commander." "It is serious. Please sit down and help me understand these reports." He activated the first holographic display. It showed detailed scans of human and Corvani anatomy side by side. The differences were startling once you knew what to look for. According to Dr. Kithmar's research, the human cardiovascular system is designed for extreme physical stress. Your heart rate can increase to levels that would kill most other species, and you can maintain that rate for hours. Elena nodded. Humans are persistent hunters. Our ancestors chased prey across vast distances until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. We evolved to run for days without stopping. Days. Zixthel stared at the data in disbelief. These readings show humans maintaining combat effectiveness after 18 hours of continuous fighting. That should be impossible. Not for humans. We have saying I can do this all day. Sometimes we mean it literally. He opened another file, this one containing blood chemistry analyses from wounded human soldiers. The chemical compositions were unlike anything in Corvani medical textbooks. Your bodies produce combat drugs naturally. During stress, humans release chemicals that increase strength, speed, and pain tolerance. These substances would be considered performance-enhancing drugs by coalition medical standards. You mean adrenaline and endorphins, if those are the proper human terms? Yes. Look at these measurements from Staff Sergeant Amy Collins during the Battle of Century Station. The hologram showed a human female fighting in a damaged corridor. Coalition plasma fire had severed an artery in her leg, causing massive blood loss. According to the medical data, she should have lost consciousness within minutes. Instead, Collins fought for 6 more hours. She used her own blood trail to track enemy movement patterns in the darkness, turning her injury into a tactical advantage. When coalition forces finally captured the position, they found her still conscious and still fighting despite blood loss that would have killed 3 Corvani soldiers. How is this possible? Zixthel asked. Elena watched the footage carefully. Amy was probably experiencing what we call a combat high. When humans face extreme danger, our bodies flood with natural chemicals that make us stronger and faster. We feel less pain and think more clearly. Some humans Become addicted to the feeling, addicted to combat, not exactly addicted to fighting, but addicted to the rush of surviving danger. It's why some humans choose dangerous jobs like firefighting, mountain climbing, or military service. They need the chemical high that comes from facing death and winning. Zixthal opened more medical files. Each one contained examples of human soldiers performing impossible feats of endurance and strength. Private Danny Foster had carried a wounded comrade for 12 km while suffering from internal bleeding. Captain Rick Turner had held a defensive position for 2 days without sleep, food, or medical attention. Dr. Keithmer documented over 300 cases of humans fighting effectively while technically dying. Zixthal said he couldn't understand how your species maintains consciousness and coordination during severe trauma. It's probably shock and adrenaline working together. When humans are badly injured, our bodies sometimes enter a state where we feel no pain and have unusual strength. We can function normally even when we're dying, at least. For a while, Elena pulled up her own data pad and showed him human medical research. We call it fight or flight response, but for humans it's mostly fight. Our ancestors who ran away from danger didn't survive to have children. The ones who stayed and fought did survive. So we inherited their biology. The implications were staggering. Humans weren't just mentally prepared for combat, they were physically designed for it. Their bodies treated warfare as a natural state, not an emergency condition. Look at this report from Colonel Ryan Murphy, Zixthal said, opening another file. He coordinated defensive operations for 4 minutes after his heart stopped beating. His heart stopped. According to the medical sensors, yes. Plasma fire to the chest caused cardiac arrest, yet he continued giving orders and directing artillery fire until medics could restart his heart with emergency procedures. Elena read the report carefully. The human brain can survive without oxygen for several minutes if the person stays calm. Ryan probably knew he was dying and used his remaining time to help his soldiers. That's very human behavior, very human and very terrifying. How do you fight an enemy that continues operating after death? She smiled grimly. You don't. That's why you had so much trouble with us during the war. Zixthal accessed another section of the medical files, these ones dealing with human psychology during combat. Coalition interrogators had tried to understand why human prisoners remained defiant even under torture. The psychological profiles revealed disturbing patterns. Your species has a concept called pain tolerance that goes far beyond normal biological limits. He observed these tests show humans withstanding levels of discomfort that cause system failure in other species. Humans learn to deal with pain. From childhood, we play contact sports, work dangerous jobs, and live in harsh environments. Pain is just another challenge to overcome. The files contained recordings of human soldiers joking while receiving medical treatment for severe injuries. They made light of wounds that would traumatize most beings, treating life-threatening damage as minor inconveniences. Listen to this conversation between medics treating Corporal Kate Sullivan. Zixthal said, activating an audio recording. The recording played sounds of a field hospital during combat. Explosions echoed in the background while medical personnel worked on wounded soldiers. Sullivan's voice came through clearly. Despite her injuries, "Hey doc, is my leg still attached?" she asked. "Barely." The medic replied, "We need to operate immediately. Can you wait until after the battle? I've got coalition troops too. Kill, you've lost too much blood to fight. I've got plenty of blood left. Most of it's still inside me." Elena laughed when she heard the recording. Kate always had a good sense of humor. She was dying and making jokes about it. That's not humor, that's psychological adaptation to trauma that shouldn't be possible. It's how humans cope with stress. We make jokes about terrible situations because laughter helps us process fear and pain. Gallows humor is a survival mechanism. Zixthal spent the next several hours reviewing medical data from the entire war. The patterns were consistent across all human populations. Enhanced cardiovascular performance, natural combat stimulants, extreme pain tolerance, and psychological mechanisms that turn trauma into motivation. Dr. Rodriguez, I need to ask you something important. Are all humans like this, or just your military personnel? All humans have these biological capabilities. Military training just teaches us how to use them effectively. Any human facing a life or death situation can access these abilities. Even civilians, especially civilians, protecting their families, a parent defending their children, is probably the most dangerous human you could encounter. The commander sat back in his chair, overwhelmed by the implications. The coalition had fought a war against an entire species of beings who were biologically optimized for combat. Every human colonist, merchant, and farmer had the potential to become a deadly warrior when threatened. Elena finished her coffee and prepared to leave. Commander, you're learning about human biology, but you're missing the bigger picture. What do you mean? These physical advantages only matter because of how we think about them. Our bodies can do amazing things, but our minds decide how to use those abilities. That's what made us so effective against the coalition. After she left, Zixthal remained in the medical archives, reading through more files. Each report confirmed what Elena had told him. Humans weren't just willing to fight to the death, they were built for it. Their evolution had created a species that treated mortal combat as a normal biological function. He opened his personal files and began updating his analysis. The coalition had made a fundamental error in understanding their enemy. They had assumed humans were similar to other species, just more aggressive. The truth was far more disturbing. Humans were apex predators, disguised as a civilized species. Their polite diplomacy and peaceful trade relationships masked the biological reality of what they truly were. Every human negotiator, every civilian transport pilot, every merchant trader was a potential killing machine waiting for the right circumstances to activate. 6 weeks into his investigation, Zixthal uncovered the most disturbing files yet. These documents contained psychological warfare analysis that made him question everything he understood about combat morale. The coalition's military psychologists had tried to break human fighting spirit using techniques that worked on every other known species. Every attempt had failed spectacularly. He sat in his office at dawn when the station was quiet and few beings moved through the corridors. The man's latest batch of files focused on human psychological responses to stress, Fear and hopeless situations, the data showed patterns that defied basic military psychology. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived earlier than usual, carrying coffee for both of them. She had been helping with the investigation for over a month now, and Zixthal had grown to depend on her insights into human behavior. "You look troubled, Commander," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "What did you discover this time?" "These psychological warfare reports from the siege of New Berlin. Coalition forces use standard demoralization techniques that should have broken your people's will to fight. Instead, human resistance became stronger." He activated the holographic display showing communication intercepts from the siege. Coalition forces had surrounded the human colony and cut off all supply lines. Standard procedure called for psychological pressure to force surrender before costly ground assault. Listen to these intercepted human radio transmissions from day 15 of the siege, Zixthal said, playing an audio file. Static filled the air, then human voices became clear. Coalition intelligence had recorded everything, trying to understand human morale patterns. "Delta Squad, this is Command. What's your ammunition status?" came a male voice. "Command, we've got about 30 rounds left in one grenade." "How's the food situation?" replied a female voice. "Food ran out yesterday. We're eating boot leather and calling it steak." "Well, at least the coalition is saving us from bad cooking. My wife always said military food would kill me." Laughter echoed through the radio static. Human soldiers were joking about starvation and imminent death as if discussing the weather. Dr. Rodriguez explained this to me. "Your people were starving and facing defeat, yet they were laughing about it." Elena listened to the recording again. Gallows humor. When humans face terrible situations, we make jokes about them. It helps us cope with stress and fear. But humor should decline under stress, not increase. Every other species shows reduced morale when conditions worsen. These humans sound cheerful because making jokes means we haven't given up. As long as humans can laugh about dying, we're still fighting. Zixthal opened another file, this one from day 21 of the siege. Human defenders had been without food for 8 days and were taking heavy casualties from coalition bombardment. Their radio communications should have shown desperation and despair. Instead, the humans had organized a comedy contest. "Attention, all units," came a voice from the speakers. "This is Major Kate Sullivan with tonight's entertainment. Private Johnson, you're up first." "Thanks, Major." So a coalition officer walks into a bar and orders a drink. The bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve losers here." More laughter filled the radio channels. Human soldiers were entertaining each other while their city burned around them. They turned warfare into entertainment. Zixthal observed, "How is that possible?" Humans have always used humor to deal with horror. During our worst historical disasters, people made jokes. It's how we maintain sanity when everything falls apart. The commander accessed more psychological profiles from coalition interrogators. Human prisoners had been subjected to standard questioning techniques designed to break their morale and extract information. The results were baffling. These interrogation reports show that threatening human prisoners made them more defiant, not less. Standard fear-based techniques actually strengthened their resistance. Elena nodded. Threats just make humans angry. And angry humans are dangerous humans. You probably would have gotten better results offering us good food and comfortable beds, but fear is supposed to weaken resistance. Every military manual teaches that frightened beings become compliant, not humans. We have it saying the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We're more afraid of being cowards than we are of dying. Sixthall pulled up another disturbing file. This one contained video recordings from human H-held positions during the final weeks of the war. Coalition forces had been preparing for desperate last stands as human defenders faced inevitable defeat. The recording showed something unprecedented in galactic military history. Watch this footage from the defense of Armstrong Colony, he said. Activating the display, the hologram showed human soldiers preparing for what they knew would be their final battle. Coalition forces outnumbered them 50-1. An orbital bombardment had destroyed most of their defenses. By every logical measure, the humans should have been terrified. Instead, they were singing. A group of human soldiers sat around a small fire, their voices rising together in harmony. The song was about heroism, sacrifice, and dying for something greater than yourself. Other humans joined in until hundreds of voices echoed through the ruins of their colony. They're celebrating their own death, Zixthal said in disbelief. They're celebrating the chance to die with meaning. Humans would rather die as heroes than live as cowards. That's not rational. Self-preservation is the strongest biological drive in every known species. Alina sipped her coffee thoughtfully. For humans, some things are more important than staying alive. Honor, duty, protecting others. We have concepts that matter more than individual survival. The recording continued. After finishing their song, the humans began preparing for battle with calm efficiency. They cleaned their weapons, checked their equipment, and wrote final messages to their families. No one seemed afraid. Listen to this conversation between Colonel Ben Hayes and his second-in-command, Zixthal said, highlighting a section of audio. Sir, coalition forces will attack at dawn. We can't possibly hold the perimeter. No, Lieutenant. How many rounds do we have left? About 6 hours worth. If we're careful, then we'll make those 6 hours count. Make sure everyone knows the plan. When the ammunition runs out, we go to hand-to-hand combat. Yes, sir. Sir, it's been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine, Lieutenant. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget. Alina smiled sadly as she listened. Ben Hayes was a good officer. He knew his people were going to die, but he made sure they would die fighting. He's planning to sacrifice his entire unit for no strategic gain. That's madness. No, that's making their deaths matter. If coalition forces had to fight hard for every position, it would slow down their advance and save other human lives. Zixthal opened more files, these ones containing psychological analysis of individual human soldiers. The profiles revealed minds that functioned differently from every other known species. Humans seemed to thrive on challenges that would break other beings. This report on Sergeant Chris Baker is particularly disturbing, he said. Baker volunteered for suicide missions repeatedly, not because he was ordered to, but because he wanted to. Some humans are drawn to extreme danger. We call them adrenaline junkies. They need increasingly dangerous situations To feel alive, during the Battle of Titan Station, Baker piloted a damaged fighter into a coalition cruiser, destroying both ships. His final transmission was recorded. Zixthel played the audio. Baker's voice came through clearly, despite the background noise of alarms and explosions. This is Wildcard 7 going. Weapons free, coalition cruiser. You've got incoming mail. Tell your admiral. This is what happens when you mess with human. Baker was laughing as his ship slammed into the enemy vessel. He was enjoying himself while committing suicide. Zixthel observed. Chris probably saw it as the ultimate challenge, flying a broken ship into an enemy cruiser and taking them with him. That's the kind of thing that appeals to certain humans. The commander spent the rest of the morning reviewing similar cases, human soldiers who volunteered for impossible missions, officers who stayed behind to cover retreats, pilots who used their own ships as weapons. In every case, the humans seemed to welcome death rather than fear it. Dr. Rodriguez, I need to understand something fundamental about your species. Why do humans choose death over surrender so often? Elena considered the question carefully. Because we believe some things are worth dying for. Freedom, family, duty, honor. We'd rather die fighting for what matters than live as slaves or cowards. But if you're dead, you can't protect anything. Tech, if we surrender without fighting, we're not protecting anything either. At least dying in combat means something. It inspires others to keep fighting. It makes the enemy pay a price for victory. Zixthel accessed one final file, this one containing post-battle analysis from coalition military psychologists. Their conclusion was simple and terrifying. Human morale could not be broken using conventional methods. The worse conditions became, the more determined humans grew. Your species weaponized suffering. He realized you turned desperation into motivation. We learned to find strength in weakness, hope and despair, and victory and defeat. That's what made us so hard to beat. Elena finished her coffee and stood to leave. 3 months after beginning his investigation, Zixthel received a message that changed everything. Admiral Velcro requested an immediate meeting in the most secure briefing room on Nexus Prime Station. The urgency in the Admiral's voice suggested that Zixthel's investigation had uncovered something important. He arrived at the briefing room to find Velcro waiting with several high-ranking coalition officers. Their expressions were grim and the security measures were extreme. Energy shields blocked the room from outside. Surveillance and armed guards stood at every entrance. Commander, sit down, Velcro said without his usual pleasantries. We need to discuss your findings about human warfare capabilities. Zixthel activated his data pad and prepared to present his analysis. Admiral, I've discovered that humans are fundamentally different from every other known species. Their biology, psychology, and culture are all optimized for combat in ways that make them extremely dangerous opponents. We know that's not why you're here. The Admiral activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images of star charts, fleet movements, and intelligence reports appeared in the air. Above the conference table, Commander, I'm about to share classified information that will change your understanding of the war. What you've learned about human combat capabilities is accurate but incomplete. The real Truth is far more disturbing, Belcross manipulated the display, showing casualty figures from the entire war. Coalition losses were staggering. Millions of soldiers, thousands of ships, and economic damage that had nearly bankrupted their civilization. The coalition won the war through sheer numerical superiority. The admiral continued, we outnumbered humans 50-1 and had better technology. By all logical measures, victory should have been quick and decisive, but it wasn't. Zixthel observed, no, the war lasted 4 years and cost us more resources than the previous century of galactic conflicts combined. Every human position had to be taken by force. Every colony required massive garrison forces that could never be rotated out safely, even after we controlled human space. Resistance never stopped. General Corax, the coalition's former supreme commander, leaned forward. Commander, tell us what you discovered about human defensive capabilities. Zixthel summarized his findings: human biological advantages, psychological resilience, cultural preparation for warfare, and their ability to turn desperate situations into tactical advantages. The officers listened with growing unease. Excellent analysis, General Corfax said. Now I'll tell you what we discovered after the war ended. The peace treaty wasn't a coalition victory, it was a strategic withdrawal disguised as negotiation. I don't understand, sir. Admiral Velcro activated new files. These ones marked with the highest security classifications. The humans offered to stop expanding their territory in exchange for complete coalition withdrawal from human space. We accepted because continuing the war would have destroyed us financially and militarily. The implications hit Zixthel like a physical blow. We surrendered. Effectively, yes, the galaxy's most powerful military alliance was forced to retreat by a species we outnumbered 50-1. Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the briefing room escorted by 2 guards. Zixthel was surprised to see her, but her presence suddenly made sense. Dr. Rodriguez, please tell the commander about your real role in this investigation, Admiral Velcro said. Elena sat down calmly and looked directly at Zixthel. I'm not a prisoner of war, Commander. I'm a military intelligence officer sent by Earth to observe coalition post-war capabilities. You've been spying on us. I've been learning about how you think, how you plan, and how you fight. Everything you've discovered about human warfare, I've been learning about coalition warfare. It's been very educational. General Corfax activated more displays, showing intelligence reports from the past 3 years. Human military development has accelerated dramatically since the war ended. They're incorporating everything they learned about galactic warfare into new ship designs, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines. The images showed human shipyards working at full capacity, producing vessels that combined human innovation with captured coalition technology, new weapons that merged human creativity with alien engineering principles, militarities, where human officers studied galactic combat tactics alongside their traditional warfare methods. How long have they been preparing for another war? Zixthel asked. Since the day the peace treaty was signed, Elena replied. The war taught us valuable lessons about galactic military capabilities. We used the ceasefire to study our enemies and develop counter Measures for every advantage you had. Over us, Admiral Velcro showed more. Intelligence data, human colonies are being fortified with defensive systems that incorporate lessons from the war. Every settlement is being turned into a fortress that could withstand prolonged siege, but more importantly, General Corex added, humans are developing offensive capabilities we've never seen before, weapons and tactics designed specifically to fight coalition forces. Elena smiled grimly. Commander, everything you learned about human warfare was us fighting defensively, protecting our homes and families. You haven't seen what happens when humans decide to go on the attack. She activated her own data pad, sharing files that made the coalition officers visibly uncomfortable. Human military doctrine is being rewritten based on what we learned about coalition weaknesses during the war. The files showed tactical analyses that were disturbingly thorough. Humans had studied every coalition defeat, every tactical error, and every weakness displayed during the war. They had turned their defensive experiences into offensive strategies designed to exploit galactic military thinking. Look at this intelligence report from our deep space reconnaissance, Elena continued. Human fleets are practicing maneuvers that assume coalition forces will fight according to standard galactic doctrine. We're preparing to face enemies who follow the same tactical principles that failed against us before. Zix realized the terrifying truth. You're not just rebuilding your military. You're designing it specifically to fight us. Of course, the coalition taught us how galactic warfare works. Now we're going to show you how human warfare works when we're not defending our homes. Admiral Velcross looked exhausted as he delivered the final revelation. Commander, the peace treaty included intelligence sharing provisions. We thought we were learning about human capabilities while sharing minimal information about ours. We were wrong. Dr. Rodriguez has been gathering comprehensive data about coalition military psychology, tactical doctrine, and strategic thinking. General Corfax explained. Everything she learned will be used to prepare for the next conflict. Elena nodded. Human military planners now understand how coalition forces think, how they plan, and how they react under pressure. We know your strengths, weaknesses, and standard responses to various tactical situations. The next war will be very different, Admiral Velcro said quietly. Last time humans were fighting desperately to protect their homes. Next time they'll be fighting to win. Zix accessed the final classified files, these ones containing projections for future conflict scenarios. The analysis was devastating. Coalition forces would face an enemy that understood their tactics better than they understood human tactics. How long before the next war begins? He asked. Elena finished her coffee and stood up. That depends on whether the coalition learned the right lessons from the last one. What do you mean? The coalition could choose to leave humanity alone and focus on peaceful coexistence, trade, cultural exchange, mutual cooperation. That would be the smart choice. Or you could try to fight us again, but next time we won't be defending scattered colonies with limited resources. We'll be coming for your core worlds with everything we've learned about galactic warfare. She walked toward the door, then paused. Commander, your investigation taught you about human defensive capabilities. You Discovered how we fight when protecting our homes and families, but you still don't understand what humans are capable of when we decide someone needs to be destroyed. After Alina left, the briefing room fell silent. The coalition officers stared at the intelligence data, understanding finally dawning on their faces. Commander Admiral Velcro said finally, "I want you to write a report recommending coalition policy toward humanity based on everything you've learned." What should we do? Zix looked at Alina's empty coffee cup sitting on the conference table. Such a simple thing, but now he understood it represented something much larger: human determination, endurance, and the ability to find strength in everyday rituals. He began writing his final report. Recommendation: avoid any future military conflict with humanity at all costs. The coalition did not defeat the humans in the last war. We taught them how to defeat us in the next one. The war had never ended. It had just given both sides time to prepare for the real fight, and the humans had used that time more effectively than anyone realized. Zixthal's investigation was complete, but his nightmares were just beginning.